Welcome to a quick review of the Xiaomi Mi 9 SE. Xiaomi, if you don't know, is a cell phone manufacturer that is probably much more popular around the rest of the world. Here in the United States, it doesn't have much brand presence. In America, it's pretty much Apple, Samsung, maybe LG, and then some other names after that, but Xiaomi is pretty damn far down the list. Kind of a similar brand presence to Huawei, except Huawei is probably much more well known now because they are banned from the United States, so that got them a lot of recognition, but not the good kind. Anyway, we're talking about Xiaomi, and Xiaomi is a company known for making extremely high-end phones at a very competitive price point. So what kind of put Xiaomi on the map was this phone called the Mi Mix, and that was the phone that is known as the one that kind of started the whole bezel-less phone trend. And that's actually the phone that caught my attention as well, and I've been keeping my eye on Xiaomi ever since. And nowadays it's a lot easier to find a Xiaomi phone on Amazon, but back in the day you used to have to buy it off of some funny website kind of, which I'm sure was legit, but it wasn't Amazon. So if you've watched enough of my videos, you know that I'm kind of picky about phone size. I don't like how big a lot of the phones are right now. I feel like the phones are just big because it makes it easier to fit more stuff inside of the phone. Like, they can just advertise a phone as having a really big screen, but the reality is that having a big screen allows them to manufacture a phone that is bigger, and a bigger phone will more easily fit more things inside of it. Whereas fitting all that into a smaller device would obviously be so much harder. But anyway, I'm gonna save that rant for another time. My point is that I decided to go with this Xiaomi Mi 9 SE because it's a little bit smaller than a lot of Xiaomi's nice phones. Now, I'm actually a fan of the notch, and this phone has one. And I like the notch because it allows the screen to go all the way to the top of the phone, all the way to the bottom of the phone, and that's a very affordable way for phone manufacturers to put a selfie camera on. Some phone companies are going real crazy and putting like retracting cameras on the inside of the phone. Shoutouts to OnePlus. And Xiaomi actually has a phone where you can kind of like slide it, and the back portion of the phone will slide to reveal a selfie camera, which is also a really cool idea, but I kind of wonder how phone cases are going to work out with that idea. This phone is also an AMOLED display phone, which is my favorite kind of display. AMOLED screens typically have a lot more potential to be bright, so visibility outside is going to be better. And in addition to that, all the individual pixels that make up the screen can actually be turned off. And so you can imagine how much battery that would save. It's a very highly efficient screen technology, and I don't really want a phone without it. The other selling point of this phone is the triple camera setup on the back. And that's one thing I'm loving about phones these days, is that so many mid-range phones, and of course the high-end phones now, have like 2 at least, maybe 3, sometimes 4 cameras on the back. And I feel like the more cameras the merrier. That's just how I feel, because they don't take up any more space. It just gives you more options when it comes to taking pictures and taking videos. So I'm always happy to see more cameras on the back of a phone. Now, this is the 128GB version of this phone. What do you think a phone like this should cost? AMOLED display, bezel-less with a notch, 3 cameras on the back, and a really sick kind of, I don't know how you want to describe this look on the back, but it's a very, very cool kind of color shifting blue. All right, so obviously a very attractive phone visually. What should a phone like that cost? Because typically you're looking at least $500-600 for a phone like that, and the Xiaomi is coming at you in the 128GB version. There's a 64, but this one is $329. And that's insane. That is insane that they have all this for that much money. But that's Xiaomi. That's what they have going for them. They're offering all this in a very price competitive package. So you might be wondering, what is it like, or what does it mean to own a phone that is not like a super big American name brand? And by that I mean name brands that are name brands in America, not American name brands, because obviously Samsung is not an American name brand. But they're one of the big players out here, and they make excellent phones, I must say. So how does Xiaomi compete? Well, I'll tell you this, and this is one of the reasons that this is going to be a quick review, is because I could go into all the technical specs about like what graphics card and processor are on here, but that stuff doesn't really matter so much to me, in my opinion, because a lot of phones have been very fast, and fast enough for pretty much everything you're going to do on it for quite a while now. So just getting faster processors, more RAM, the technology that they've been putting in phones in terms of that stuff, like processing power, has been overkill for some time right now. So pretty much anything coming out right now is going to be fast enough. And for me, it's more a matter of how are they putting all this together? Like, what is the experience of owning this phone and using this phone like? Honestly, kind of hard to come by a phone that is sized this reasonably and has all this technology. So anytime a phone does, it's on my radar. So on paper, I pretty much love everything about this phone except 2 small things. One, you don't have expandable storage. A lot of people don't necessarily care about that, but I do. And it doesn't have a headphone jack, which is typical for so many phones. I don't know why. Just leave it in there. Why don't you just leave the jack alone, huh? So no headphone jack, no expandable storage. On paper, those are kind of the two big strikes for me against this phone, but my God, it is like $330 for all this, so I had to check it out. I had to get to know this phone. And this is really the first Xiaomi phone that I've gotten to know sort of intimately in this way. Intimately, it's just a phone, come on. But that I've had some more hands-on experience over time with, and I feel like I've gotten to know what the Xiaomi experience is like, and here's what I'll tell you. So if you are familiar with what it's like to use an Android device, this is pretty much maybe like a 90% what you would expect out of owning an Android device, because it is an Android device, but this phone does kind of have its own user interface, and there's little things that they've done, or maybe didn't do, that are a little bit bothersome for me, like it's really little things, honestly. It's things like when I drag down the notification screen, all of my notifications have to be swiped to the right if I want to get rid of them. If I swipe them to the left, it brings up these options that I don't need to mess with right now. So that's just like kind of an adjustment thing, but I always have to swipe to the right. That's kind of silly. Typically an Android device will just let you swipe whatever way you want. I feel like that's quicker. There's certain things up here in the display icon, like the convenience icons area. That's just what I'm calling it. I don't really know what you call it, but they just have some weird feature names here, like rotate off, as in you can turn off the rotate off. It's just this kind of weird, like redundant thing. Maybe it was lost in translation, but instead of turning rotation off, you turn rotation off. As in when this is off, it's going to auto rotate, and when it's on, it does not rotate. Or even things about like the display timeout. For the life of me, I could not find out, and maybe I could have Googled it, maybe it exists, but there's certain things that just aren't very intuitive on this phone. Like I can't seem to find any control about when the screen will actually turn off. So some of these features are just a little bit more buried, and some of them just don't exist quite in the same way as you would expect out of your typical Android experience. But it is an Android phone, so you're gonna be pretty familiar with how to use it. It just kind of has its own way of doing some of the more specific features. So these little complaints I have about the user experience are kind of common actually. If you watch other reviews, you'll see a lot of the times they'll get to the end of the video and then they'll talk about the user experience and they'll say something like it's a little bit clunky or a little bit cluttery or it could be a little more cleaner. And I basically feel the same way. I would say it's like 90% the same experience from a typical Android phone. And by typical, I mean like the Samsung, LGs, etc. The big brands out here. But there's that little 10% that is kind of a bother. But that might not be a big deal for you at all. You might not care. But if you're familiar with the other brands and that's what you know and you switch over to this, you'll probably notice that a little something's off. But it's a pretty marginal difference at the end of the day, and that's just one of those things you have to factor in with the savings. Is making a compromise on those little things worth it to you to save about probably around half the price you would pay for a bigger name brand phone of the same specs? And hopefully this review helps you put that into perspective a little bit. If there's another phone that is on your guys' radar, let me know. I can do a review of it. I could also go a little bit more in depth. This is just kind of a quick video to give you a quick impression on the differences between Xiaomi and a typical name brand, but also why you might actually be interested in a phone like this. Because again, this price point for everything that it's offering is insane. But there are little compromises here and there that I noticed, and you can decide for yourself whether or not those are deal breakers. But if not, this is a sick phone, and I'm still kind of shocked it's only $330. Anyway, thank you for watching. Subscribe to show your support and stay tuned for future videos. I will see you guys in the next one. See ya.